either a reduction or no change in respect of the effective rate of tax on property and gold. Now, as regards the equity, yes, it has gone up from 10 to 12.5, but you will also find that unlisted equity has gone down from 20 with indexation to 12.5 without indexation. Basically, we have a very, very simple, easy regime. All listed, all unlisted are at 12.5% long term. And all are at 20%, equities are at 20% and everything else is at applicable rate for short term. So yes, short term has gone up, and yes, long term has been rationalized. It has not necessarily gone up. And Sanjay, would you like to add anything?
One point I would like to add over here is that we also need to keep in mind as to the kind of people who are actually paying these taxes, the capital gains on the securities, the listed securities especially. And so over there, when we did this analysis for the year 22-23, we found that about 88% of the tax is actually coming from people who have an income of more than 15 lakh. 61% of that income is actually coming from people who have an income of more than 1 crore.
That is income on capital gains on this.
And we are all aware that otherwise, the standard rate is, about 30%. And for some it can go up to 39%. So this marginal, very small marginal increase is actually impacting only those, primarily those who have an income of more than 15 lakh rupees per year.
Okay, number 3.
On capital gains.
Ma'am, Timsi Jaipuria from CNBC TV 18. You announced a very lucrative new tax regime with changes in tax slabs. A lot of new changes are there in the income tax side, on the revenue side. And in the speech, you mentioned that revenue foregone will be around 29,000 crore rupees, whereas government will now try to mobilize around 30,000 crore rupees. What will be these revenue mobilization measures, and from where do you think this foregone revenue will be recovered? If you can highlight, where are you foregoing the revenue and where are you going to recoup this revenue from?
First of all, it is not just because we've mentioned it in this budget, but the attempt to widen the tax net is something which we've been repeatedly saying, that India's tax net will have to be widened, whether it is in the direct taxation or indirect. Second, there are also now the PSU dividends which are improving because their valuations have gone up really high. And their performance is also now substantially increased. So revenue mobilization is not just tax-based, you have non-tax revenue mobilizations which are also coming up. Then we had, for almost now 3 years, been talking about asset monetization, which is not selling of assets, but optimum utilization of those assets which are lying in the form of unutilized stadiums or land which is available with PSUs which can be utilized for better purposes. That's a third one. Fourth, you're also looking at generating resources from newer areas. So in all those, the revenue is going to be mobilized better, and as a result of which the revenue foregone will be now made up for, is our expectation. We've said that in the budget. In my speech itself, I mentioned it, and I'm sure there are secretaries who will want to add to it. Sanjay?
Ma'am, I'll give the for details. 37,000 crore, 29,000 crore in direct taxes and 8,000 crore in indirect taxes. So 29,000 crore direct taxes primarily comprises of 3 taxes, which is the increase in the STT only on derivatives, which is only on futures and options. And secondly, the buyback tax, which is to be now done in the hands of the recipient. While on the one hand, it will rationalize the tax and be more equitous and fair, because those who should be paying the taxes, higher taxes, In the higher income groups, they will pay higher tax, and those who are in nil tax category or in lower tax category, they don't have to pay a tax or a lower tax. While it does that, at the same time, it does bring in some revenue also, about 4,000 crore, and remaining, about 15,000 crore should come, from the capital gains taxes. On the indirect taxes, we are losing, as I said, about 8,000 crore primarily on the reduction in duties, especially in gold. There is a huge reduction from 15% to 6%. And then there is revenue foregone because of the personal income tax rates and the standard deduction being allowed in the new tax regime.